picture. Cut the lights. This is it. The night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part.
Welcome to Figure This Out, a podcast where two teacher friends talk into a microphone about musical theater and everything else. I'm your host, Heather Foister.
And I'm your other host, Shurree Clouse. And here we go with episode 1, take 2, a 5, 6, 7, 8.
Thank you, class. So, welcome to look, you're just going to have to get used to what we are. We had a really good first take.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was like 15 to 20 minutes of just awesome content.
Yeah.
And it wasn't recording.
It's okay.
And I said, don't hate me. And she said, I don't.
I don't.
So this is why we work.
We're still figuring things out.
We are figuring things out. So just a little bit of background about us. I am a teacher at Somerset High School. All of my teaching career in the classroom, minus about 5 months in a different district, have been at Somerset schools. I've been there, this is, I believe, my 13th year, and each year we've done a musical, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. And when I was hired, I had not done any musical theater directing or any choir directing, and they didn't have either program. And so when I was hired, I was told, it's really two people's job, but you can figure it out. You can do it.
You can do both.
You can do both. And I still do both. 13 years later, still doing both things. So, that's just a little bit of my journey to Somerset. What about you, Klaus?
Well, I have been teaching for about 15 years, and I was in a couple of districts previous to Somerset, but I began in 2016, hired as an English teacher. And through my interview process, and once I knew that I was going to be there full-time as a teacher, the previous principal gave me a tour of the facilities and showed me to the auditorium where they were actively doing construction on it and giving it a whole new makeover to what it is now. And I had heard of our program before. I'd heard of Beauty and the Beast from some other people. And so while I was speaking to that principal, I said, I love musicals. I've heard that Beauty and the Beast was great. It had just happened. So this was the summer afterward. And he said, well, you should help out. And so through that, I did. And here I am 8 years later.
Welcome to the madness.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sucked you in. I had that same tour.
Yeah.
Same tour. So that was before the renovation.
Yes.
And I think you've seen pictures of what that looks like.
I have only seen pictures.
Yes. So Beauty and the Beast was actually the first year that we had the new seats and the renovation had happened.
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit later on, how that came to play. But during my interview, they took me down to the auditorium where there was this baby grand piano and like this one small spotlight over top of it.
Yeah.
And they said, all right, it's time to play the piano. And I went, oh, okay. And then, my degree is in vocal music education, vocal emphasis. And
right.
They said, or they asked, do you want to sing while you play? And I said, no. And so I didn't. And I mean, the principal at the time had heard me sing with my sisters. I grew up singing with my sisters.
Right.
This is Southern gospel music.
Yeah.
And, so he knew I could sing. But I'm still shocked that they took no for an answer.
Yeah.
And then they still hired me with no experience. So it's either they had some faith or just kind of desperate. I don't know which one.
I don't know.
Probably both.
But it worked out.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
So it worked out.
Yeah.
So here we are. In a nicer auditorium.
Yes.
Same enthusiasm from a bunch of our kiddos, but much nicer space. And we'll, again, get into that in a little bit. But let's talk about the podcast a little bit. Just kind of introduce people what it's going to be about, and and why we're doing this. So I am part of a grant through KEDC, and I am in the Renaissance portion of that grant, which is for teachers who teach the arts, and it's different venues of professional development. And part of that is being paid to do things that would develop you more as a professional, or that they would like to see teachers doing. And podcasting was one of them.
Yeah.
So I did the training. They sent me the microphone. Thank you very much. Shout out to KDC.
Woo!
Woo! So with that, it needs to be about the arts. And so we started brainstorming a little bit about what this was going to be about. Through KEDC as well, though, they sent us this quiz.
Yes.
And I know I'm kind of sidebarring a little bit, but it'll make sense here in a second. So they sent us this quiz at the beginning of this school year to learn our creative type. And I thought, well, this is great for me to figure out, about myself, but that the students would probably benefit from knowing what their creative type is as well. So I took the quiz and I got visionary, which is, the person who has big ideas and maybe could lead people into having that idea come to fruition. So in the description, it has potential collaborators.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, my husband, teacher, different school district. We're okay with it, though. We get along just fine.
Right.
But I said, I'll have him take it. He's got to be my collaborator. He just has to be. So he took the quiz, and he's a visionary, too. And in the description, it's like, it's not the best collaborator. It's another visionary because you just have a lot of ideas.
Yes.
And you're too busy. And anybody who knows the Foisters knows that's absolutely true. So I sent it to you.
Yeah.
To see what you got. So what'd you get?
I got the thinker, which is the ideal collaborator for the visionary. So the people who think like me or are creative in the same way that I am kind of take those big vision pieces and then turn those into more practical steps.
Yeah.
So kind of help your balloon along a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. And so if anyone wants to take this, it's mycreativetype.com. And there are all sorts of different creative types, but the thinker is the one who is the perpetual student, always thinking about discovery, but also that really important thing for me is always like, what is the practical application for things? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a tough area for visionaries sometimes because we get really excited about ideas. And I've learned over the years of becoming a musical director that I made some very grave mistakes in my early career. And I wasn't the kind of person to ask for help or ask for input. Very headstrong kid, very headstrong teenager, and headstrong adult. And I had to learn very quickly that is not how success comes around. Like, it can't work like that. So collaborating and
it takes a lot. Yeah,
it does. Well, and then finding people that do collaborate well with you.
Yes.
Like having someone who's like, okay, that's a great idea, but let's figure out the best way to go about that instead of just jumping right in.
Yes.
Having a plan. So this is why we work together.
Yes.
And this is why it works. All because of that quiz. No,
yeah.
I mean,
well, the quiz and many years together. Yes.
And that one time in Kenya, which we'll talk about.
We'll talk about another day.
We'll talk about Kenya a different day. Has nothing to do with musical theater. That's the everything else.
It's the everything else part.
The everything else. Okay. So back to the podcast and what it will serve, like what purpose it will serve. So originally we just wanted to talk about our musical program. It's always been a dream of mine to help people start musical programs because ours started from nothing, literally nothing, to what it is today has taken a long time. But I also did make those mistakes that I hope to help other programs to skip over. That maybe their program could get to where we are now and skip some years.
Yes.
Heather said, don't do this. Let's maybe listen to the mistake that she made and not do the same thing. So, and I know you always drove to podcasting in general, right?
I love podcasts.
Yeah.
I listen to podcasts all the time. I have about a 2-hour commute each day, and so I get to listen to lots of podcasts in the car. So, and my dad was a radio DJ growing up.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So he was on the radio, and I wanted to be on the radio like him for a little while, and I got to do that a time or two. I wasn't very good at that,
that's cool, though.
But yeah, it's something that's always been kind of around.
My dad talks a lot.
Yeah, well, there you go.
He wasn't on the radio. He does talk a lot.
Professional talkers.
He is professional talkers.
And now we're professional talkers.
Preacher. Well, we are teachers.
Yes.
I know we're digressing just a little bit, but yes, we are professional talkers. Okay, so we decided that the best way to go about this, going back to collaboration, is to ask our students, what do you want to hear us talk about? And what do you think we should call this podcast? And at the time, it was just going to be about musical theater. It was going to be about our program. And so we started with my theater production and management class, which you collaborate with as well.
Yes.
Because it just happens to fall during your planning. That works out really nicely.
It's been great this year.
Me.
Yeah.
It works out really well. So we talked to them first and got some ideas from them. And then we decided to branch out to the musical theater classes. So we're getting into 90 plus, maybe 100 different students who are giving their ideas, which I just love. So we have this treasure trove of information from these kids of things that they would want to hear, or if they want to be on the podcast themselves, things that they would want to talk about. Well, when I approached our principal about this and that we were going to start it, he asked, is that all you're going to talk about? Like, is it just going to be musical theater? And I said, maybe it shouldn't be. And he was like, maybe you're right. Like, maybe we should branch out a little bit. And so we presented that to the kids, and they were like, absolutely. In the eyes of those who are not involved in musical theater, like, lit up a little bit. And
very excited.
Perked up, yes. They got really excited about that. So that shifted to the musical theater, the arts, and everything else. So how do we name it, Klaus? Tell our listeners.
Well, we were discussing this at practice for our musical this year, and so we were trying to come up with different names. We talked about some of the things that the kids came up with, and then we ourselves were trying to come up with things. Some of the things the kids had come up with, were already podcasts that existed, so we couldn't use those ideas. Some of our things were just cheesy and not great.
No.
But
they're pretty bad.
Yeah, some of them were pretty bad. I was thinking about, it just came into my mind, figure this out. And last year during our show, The Music Man, there was a binder, which we have binders for example, this one was for the music and for the person who was cueing the music. And on the binder was a Post-it, hurriedly scribbled, saying, figure this out. And the person who received that binder thought that message was for her. But really, you had just written it to yourself.
I did.
But we didn't know that at the time. The other people who were backstage all looked at this, and she looked and she was like, is this for me? Am I being yelled at through a Post-it? And
which is the best way.
Well, yeah, of course. And so there was a little bit of discussion, and then finally we approached you with, what is this Post-it about? and then you took ownership that was for yourself to figure out something.
It was
in the music as far as one of the cues went, but I just latched onto that and just felt that it was the funniest thing, because so much of what we do through our musical program is figure this out, figure it out on the fly, and just keep going. Yeah. We don't have opportunity to kind of really pause and ponder. We got to figure it out.
Right. And now. You got to figure it out pretty quickly.
Yes.
You learn, we think on our feet more often than we get to plan, I feel like. Sometimes, at least during show week. You don't have a lot of time to just be like, all right, let's make a 3-point plan here. It's like, no, we got to put out fire. Like, not a real fire. Nothing caught on fire.
Not yet.
So, but if so, we'd be ready.
Yes, we would. So that just really defined everything we do, and I felt that it was so fitting for the podcast and allowed us to have the scope of just covering anything we wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a nice list of things that the kids either want to hear or want to come on to the podcast to talk about. So, but today, again, we're just kind of introing, and so I want to give a little bit of history about our program, so folks can kind of follow along of our journey, and hopefully it's either entertaining or can at least help them in their journey to start theirs. So, like I said before, when I was hired, there was no musical program, and there had been though. So it was like decades earlier.
Years and years before.
Years.
Yeah.
And it was very successful. And I'm not sure what happened. Usually it's whoever your director is retires. And again, I'm just speculating because I don't know this answer. But it lay dormant for a couple decades. Like it was a long time.
Yeah.
And the room was at one point before the Center for Rural Development opened, which is our biggest venue right now for performances. Before it opened, we were the biggest one. So W.B. Jones was the biggest one.
Oh, yeah.
And it was known for having a lot of seats. We can seat over 700 people in our room. And then the fly rail system.
Yes.
Which there's only 2 in our county. It's us and the Center for Rural Development, which is this very large building.
Yeah.
And so when they hired me, they were like, hey, we would like to see this come back up. And of course, I had no idea what it was doing. And so we did, our first show was Grease that year, which if I can go on ahead and start giving recommendations, that show didn't cost us a lot of money. We didn't have any money at that time. We had whatever we needed. They were just like, just let us know. And so we didn't really have a budget at that time. And so I recommend shows like that.
Yeah.
Because they're well known. And then costuming's easy. And the dancing could be easy or difficult. It doesn't matter because the songs are so strong.
Yes.
And the storyline is so familiar that you don't really have
And everybody knows Grease.
Everybody knows Grease.
Yeah.
I remember though, with rehearsals, there was no hierarchy of, oh, well, this is musical season, so everybody knows that this is. So there wasn't a set rehearsal schedule.
Oh.
We set it every week with the cast members. There were only like 13 of them, I think, 13 or 14. And they all played sports.
Yeah.
And so we would sit down at the beginning of each week and
figure out when you would
figure out when we were going to practice. Yeah.
Wow. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. It was awful. Because our times would be like 6 to 8 o'clock at night.
Oh,
or 8 to 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
Or 4 to this time or whatever. Like, so they were random.
Just based on everyone else's schedule.
Yes.
Wow.
And so at that time I was single. And so I was a brand new teacher. You just kind of do what you have to do to be successful in any way. And so I just did it.
You were trying to keep your job. You were just going to do what it took.
Yes. So then we hit snow and then we hit sickness. And so we actually had to push our show out to May.
Oh, wow.
Our shows now are in late March.
Yeah, they're in March.
They're before spring break.
Always.
And late May. And I will make a confession. I did not advertise on purpose for this show.
Yeah.
Because you could tell that it was a first-year teacher who didn't know what she was doing. So I didn't advertise very much and was like, well, we'll get this year done. It filled up. Both shows. Full. And
That's amazing.
And I was terrified because I was like, oh, now there's people.
But it shows you the support.
Now there's witnesses. People
that everybody had for the program.
So excited.
Yes.
People were so excited to see it start back up.
Yeah.
And then too, the kids that we had in our cast were a diverse group. And so you had your sports kids, and then you had your academic team kids, and you had your band kids. Like, we had all different kinds, which is still a thing.
Which is still a thing.
Like, it's so diverse. And so all of these people who wouldn't probably normally gather together at Somerset High School were there.
Yeah.
Like families and things of all these different kids in these different interests.
Yeah.
And so it went fine. We had all kinds of issues, which we will talk about.
We'll do a deep dive at some point.
We will do a deep dive of each show.
Yeah.
And there were so many, but it was successful. We charged $5.
Hey,
I know, and I was like, I wish we could charge more because we only did 2 shows, and so we didn't make a lot of money, but we made some.
Yeah.
And during one of the shows, I think it was during intermission of one of the shows, there was an alumnus who walked up to our principal at the time and handed him a check with a large amount of money written on it and said, I want to be a part of getting this room back to where it used to be. So that was during Grease.
Yeah.
I didn't know that had happened until the show weekend was over, but my principal said, hey, this has sparked interest and we're going to start campaigning.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that started a campaign that led to $250,000 in a renovation.
Wow.
Which is, that's just mind blowing to me. And it's like, I remind our students all the time about those pioneers, like those kids,
Yes.
the ones who were brave enough to actually try something that could have been made fun of, it could have failed, and some parts of it failed, but overall it was successful.
Yeah.
And so we're so thankful for them, for, like I said, like the pioneer group that was like, we're gonna go into the unknown and we're gonna be brave enough to be on stage and to lead this program into starting.
Yeah.
And so we kind of built from there. So shows we've done after that are Singing in the Rain.
Yes.
Then the year after that we did Beauty and the Beast, which is, did you get to see Beauty and the Beast?
I never got to see Beauty and the
but
Beast.
you just heard about it.
I wish I had. Like,
Yeah.
I feel as if I knew about it.
Yeah.
And I feel as if somebody maybe even invited me to go watch, and I, for whatever reason, and so I have that regret that I never did see it. I've seen the video recording.
Oh, okay.
Because
Well,
that exists.
Yeah.
But no, my first show with you guys was Wizard of Oz.
Which was the year after that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know all the thoughts that I had in my head from Grease up until that point, and the madness that it could be sometimes, and how we just still didn't really know what we were doing. So show week of Wizard of Oz, like what went through your mind during that time?
Well, my experience with musicals, beyond just watching them and enjoying them, I had never been in a musical unless a church one counts. And so
I think that counts.
Yeah, I mean, like a church performance.
Yeah.
But when I came in and first began helping, I can't even remember what all the roles were that I played, but I do remember that first dress rehearsal week and having some deep fear for a little bit.
Yeah.
That, is this going to come together or is it not?
Right.
Based on a couple of different things, just not knowing how the transition from having practice 3 times a week turns into a show that you could put on, because if you've never been a part of something like that, you kind of assume that you run it through over and over and over again. You think of it like a movie.
Right.
Like if you see a movie put together or watch behind the scenes or something like that, there's only the one go.
Right.
And you do, for dress rehearsal week, you go through act 1 once, you go through act 2 once, and then you try to do the whole show, and then now it's in front of people.
Yes.
And so I do have a very clear memory of standing in our auditorium and watching what's going on the stage and thinking to myself, is this going to come together?
Right. And I can't blame you for that.
Yeah.
Because I had the same thoughts. and I feel like every year it kind
There's
of...
always...
It just feels like a miracle.
Dread at some point.
Yeah,
that,
and it just feels like a miracle that it actually happened.
Absolutely.
Because they've grown quite big.
Yes.
They've grown into these productions where it started as just me and my family. Thank you, family. It started as kind of like a family affair, and then we started gradually getting staff, and I think that around that time is when I learned that you cannot steer a ship that is big by yourself.
No,
so you either stay in a small boat. I'm either Jack Sparrow by myself,
right,
in my small boat, or I am Barbossa in my Black Pearl.
Right.
Yes.
What a reference.
I know. I love pirate references. So which one? And you can't do all the jobs on the ship alone. So I had to change my mindset about asking for help, not feeling bad about it either, about admitting that I can't do it alone, and then letting someone do the job. Yeah. Like just handing it over, and if they say they want to do it, believe them. Yeah. And just let them. And I know that's hard to do.
Well, and there was so much support from our students and the community that you had to grow.
Oh, absolutely.
We really, and you really couldn't have chosen not to.
Right. Well,
we had a lot of push.
That's not what we do either. I feel like every year we want to top what we did the year before. Yeah. Yeah. And so we did grow from that point into the next year, which I believe was...
Mary Poppins.
Was it Mary Poppins?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the year that we brought on the art department.
Yes.
At our school. And our assistant principal at the time actually helped with some of the set for that as
Yeah,
well. So
a lot.
Mary Poppins was an explosion. Like Wizard of Oz we were getting there, but Mary Poppins was this explosion of set, costuming, and still to date, I believe, our most expensive show. I think so.
Yeah.
Music Man came really close to it. I'm pretty sure that Mary Poppins was $36,000.
Wow.
Which, going back to Greece, was nothing.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have. We were given money as needed, but we probably spent maybe $1,000, $2,000 total. And so now our shows are. I mean, they're 25 plus.
Yeah, multi-thousand.
I don't think that we've done one for less than 25 since. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe Beauty and the Beast. Maybe. I don't know. So Mary Poppins, we brought on our art department, which was just so great. Because now you have another adult, which is amazing. Another person on staff. And that's another awesome thing about Somerset Independent Schools is that we have stipends for our staff, which is not something that every district has.
Right. We're very fortunate.
We are extremely fortunate in that. So we brought on Steve Watkins.
Yes.
And he started designing, building, but that also brought on our art department at school. So we have all these kids who are phenomenally talented, whose work is being seen by a couple thousand people every year.
So many kids being showcased.
Beauty and the Beast on YouTube has been viewed over 40,000 times.
Which is
so when you think about that, now their work is being seen by who knows how many people. So that was a pivotal year when it came to set design, but then also producing shows that were a little bit closer to Broadway quality, I guess. And I wouldn't say we're Broadway, but like getting closer to that sort of quality.
Yeah, I think it made people sit up and listen and really pay attention to our program a little bit more because we just went up another tier. Yeah. And we can continue to do so.
Well, and then the biggest complaint, because, there's always something every year that we're like, okay, how can we be better for next year? Well, there was a lot of downtime with Mary Poppins because of all the set changes.
Oh, yes.
And so remember for Shrek, we were like, okay, no downtime.
Yes.
No downtime for set changes. And so we figured out, and this is something that we still do. We are constantly, like a Broadway show, constantly moving. So there, if at all, that there are never moments where the audience is sitting in the dark waiting on something.
Yes.
It's rare that it happens now, and sometimes it has to because of a costume change, but it is extremely rare. And we took a show of Mary Poppins that was 2.5 hours long. That's way too long, by the way, for those of you starting programs. Don't do that. 2.5 hours long because of the set changes. Shifted to Shrek the Musical, which is just as long.
Yeah.
But without all those set changes, 2 hours and 9 minutes.
We move fast.
Yes.
We cut
20 minutes.
We got so much better.
We cut 20 minutes, which that's amazing. And people now when they leave, they don't say, "Oh man, that was really long." They say, "That went by so fast." Because it moves like a movie now.
Yes. And I think that makes people respect and see our work so much more because it is, like you said, so much quicker and and just like a movie.
Yeah. So. And I love that change. I love that change that we made. Then the next year was Newsies.
Yes. Newsies.
It's my favorite.
I think it's so many people's favorite.
It's my favorite. And if people ask me all the time, what's your favorite? The students ask me all the time. And it has nothing to do with kids. It has nothing to do with with casting. Because I don't want anybody listening, especially who's alumni, to be like, oh, well, she chose it. It's not that.
No.
It's the music, the choreography,
our dancing,
the story.
It was amazing.
That everything. Was the year that we went big with dancing.
Big.
And that was the time that I made a choice, or I made a suggestion about doing Newsies, and the response initially from everybody was like, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Because that's not anything that we've done. We do dancing, but we don't have turns and leaps and acrobatics and fight scenes and all that. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, but it looks like fun. We should do it.
Well, and I just loved Newsies from childhood. It was one of my favorites.
Yeah. Good film. And so we jumped on board with it. And our biggest cast, I think.
Yes.
up until this year.
Yes.
Was Newsies. Yeah, I think so.
So many kids.
So many kids. And I not even mentioned our kiddos cast. We brought in little kids.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot.
We love you, but we
do live, yes.
We love you. We forgot
There's
about
a lot to remember.
It is so many things. And so we'll talk about them a little bit more during our Wizard of Oz deep dive, because that's when we brought them on board. But yeah, it's 40 plus kids on our stage, and our stage isn't very big.
Yeah.
It's pretty small. So yeah, Newsies. Big year.
Mm-hmm.
Big crowds. Even though people didn't know what the musical was about. And that's what I loved about that phase in our musical program, is that people trusted that we were going to present the best that we could.
Yeah, they knew it was going to be great. I'm not going to say
it's the best show they've ever seen, but we will do everything in our power to present the best story to them, and that they are starting to come to our shows no matter what the title is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next year is Cinderella, correct?
Cinderella.
Okay, so we are in 2020.
Yes.
The Cinderella. And so we'll deep dive that one on a different day, but that was what we call our COVID show.
Yes.
So that's the show. What did you call it earlier today? The show that never...
The show that never was.
Yeah, the show that
never was. And we tried a lot.
Multiple times.
Many times.
Many times.
And anybody who was involved with it will always have a tenderness towards Cinderella.
Yeah. That
it never happened. But if people are thinking about the year of 2020, the world, at least here, didn't shut down until March. Well, we were 2 weeks from dress rehearsal?
I think so.
Or 1 week from dress rehearsal?
I've been saying it so much.
Yeah.
I tell these stories to our kids at school all the time. So 9 days, I think it was.
So we went through an entire musical season and just never got to perform it.
Yeah.
And then we tried again in the summer.
Yeah.
That didn't work out. We even tried virtual practices. And
we did.
So that kids wouldn't forget things.
Yeah.
And we tried a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't meant to be. And I think that we'll just kind of always say Cinderella.
The show that never was.
The show that never was. But then we had The Show Must Go On.
Right. Yes.
Which was our comeback.
Right. And so we learned, and we'll share more on our deep dive on Cinderella, but we learned that during COVID times, producing a title is just not feasible. And so we decided that the following year, 2021, to do just a musical review. It was about an hour long.
Yeah.
And did just different, we didn't charge for that one. We just did different dance numbers from famous movies, famous musicals. Didn't charge. We could only show it to 200 people.
Yes.
Each show because of
due to the restrictions.
Yeah. So.
But it was something fun for the kids to look forward to, and for the community to look forward to as well.
And they sold out.
Yeah.
but
people came.
If you can only sell 200, I mean, I guess it's going to
people came and so it was its own little special thing.
Well, and it's kind of going back to that, because that was a small cast, about 13, 14 kids. Mm-hmm. Kind of going back to the Grease kids.
Yes.
Who stuck with it no matter what, because they had a passion for it.
Very bonded.
So our program went from big numbers, 40 plus, back down to the 15 and below. And no little kids, right? Because we didn't want to contact trace with anyone outside of our school. And so the following year, we decided to do a title again. But again, had a small cast.
We did.
I think it was 18.
I don't know. Yeah. It may have even been less.
At this point, there had been 2 grades worth of kids who had not seen a musical. And then 2 grades that had graduated out. So it's like the popularity of the musical had gone down.
Right.
And not because people didn't like it anymore. It was because it just didn't exist.
It just didn't exist.
It just wasn't there.
So it wasn't quite from scratch, but in a lot of ways it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we started, and then we did, that was Adam's Family.
Oh.
School edition. Throw
it out there, which is still such a fun show. Oh, I loved Adam's
such a blast.
Family. I'm not sure I laughed that much during a season. And again, small cast.
Very small.
Very like bonded group, and I can't wait until we deep dive on Addams Family.
There'll be a lot to say about
so
that.
We can talk about Cast Party.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, and we'll probably bring on some kids for that one.
Yeah, that'd be great
to talk to you guys about it, because it was pretty special. So that leads us to last year.
Yes, with the Music Man.
So tell our listeners how we came about to Music Man.
Well, we struggled a little bit with what to do after Addams Family. We weren't sure where to go. We looked at the materials of what was available, what we could do rights-wise. And I started looking back at some old school titles and even just thinking about what is it that I know. Personally, grew up with 2 VHSs of musicals in my house. Age. That's right.
Yeah.
One was West Side Story, but the other one was The Music Man. Mm-hmm. And I had grown up watching that musical. I knew every word, every line, every song, and I loved it. And so I believe I suggested that to you, and I think you had heard of it, but never seen it.
Never seen it. And I know that's a shame as a musical director.
Well,
to have never seen it.
You can't know all of them.
Yeah.
That's
a pretty important one.
Well, you know.
Why not just direct it?
And so we looked at that, and we looked at our cast, and I think at that point kind of felt more comfortable with it. But our concern was the kids will have no idea what this is.
Right.
And can we get, after the very raucous support that Addams Family got, the school was so excited by Addams Family. They loved it. They loved it. Can we get kids on board for something they've never heard of?
Right.
Like The Music Man.
Yes.
A show from more like the golden age.
Right.
And so the film came out in like the 60s. So people in the community, some of them probably have heard of it but never seen it.
Right.
But our kiddos, they trusted us.
Yes. In droves.
Yeah.
30, did we have 32?
Yeah, 32 or 33, something along that number.
It was a lot. We almost doubled what we had
Addams Family.
In Addams Family. And I remember just, we take choosing our titles very seriously.
Yes.
And we're going to do another episode about that even. How to choose a title and things to keep in mind. And that year in particular was the toughest choice.
Took us a long time to figure it out.
It took a long time and a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever talked to that many people before about what we were going to do.
Yeah, we put out a lot of feelers.
A lot. And I remember being very nervous to announce it.
Yeah.
And we do our announcements a special way. And again, we'll share that on a different day as well.
Yeah.
But the room was kind of quiet and one kid said, "Yay!" So if you're not sure about doing a classic title,
yes,
just make sure that you're pretty well established to where your kids are going to be invested no matter what, because they trusted us, like you said, that we were going to put on a good season for them and good memories and a fun show that they could be proud of. And we had a really good turnout for it.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. Once, all the editing with the film and stuff was done, I was like, man, this one turned out really well.
It was really nice.
Yeah. Which leads us to where we are now. What are we doing this year, Klaus? Tell the listeners what we're doing.
We are doing Disney's Little Mermaid.
Oh, Disney.
We haven't done a Disney title in such a long time.
So long. And a Disney animated title. Beauty and the Beast. Well, Mary Poppins counts a little bit.
Has some animation.
But not enough.
No.
Like, we had some penguins. But
we sure did.
As far as we went. So, I am so excited to do Little Mermaid. And the kids were just, the response to us announcing this one.
They kind of screamed.
They
were excited.
A lot is very loud. And so we are neck deep, I guess.
Yeah.
We're in deep waters.
We're in the thick of it.
Yeah, we are in the thick of it. Season started in November. Well, actually in October with auditions. And so we started rehearsals in November, and we're midway. More than midway. Shows in like 40-something days. 40-something.
Yeah.
It's next month. When a kid said...
It is next month.
Yeah, when a kid said, "Oh, that's next month," I was like, okay. It's like, not panic, but just like the reminder that says, okay,
Yeah.
maybe there's some things that we need to check off the list. So, so I'm excited, and we'll have some kids on from Little Mermaid at some point.
Absolutely.
Talk about what we're doing with that. So I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
On episode 1, and join us for episode 2. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
All the fails, all the things that worked for us and things that just did not work for us in episode 2.
Right.
So.
And curtain.
Okay. Oh. What? What'd you do?
Okay, so back in the day, there was a troupe of actors who would come around and they would travel.
Okay.
And they came to our church and they would do little skits.
Okay.
And because they were on a stage in a sanctuary, they didn't have actual curtains to close. So they would just say, curtain. In this really serious, somber. So you knew it was over. Yeah.
Oh, so we knew when to applaud.
Yes, and you know now when to applaud. Just like now.
Just
curtain. So
because podcasts don't have curtains either.
No, we don't.
They don't.
Or outro music, but we'll figure that out one day.
Yeah, we'll throw some in there.
Yeah.
So you'll get what you guys get. All right, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and we'll see you in episode 2.
Bye.